Before I start on my next rewrite series, I want to do some breakdowns on the clear and obvious flaws that the Naruto story has. While it's a fun idea to create an entirely unique story myself within the confines of the Naruto verse, or even do complete rewrites of current events, I think understanding why people crave rewrites in the first place will help me create a better product. I've promised everyone a huge Naruto related project in the works, so look forward to that. But first, we need to look at what's wrong with Naruto canon. On with the video! Number 1. There are several reasons why Kaguya exists as a character in Naruto, and I wanted to tackle some of these reasons and try to logic out how they came to be. Kishimoto knew before Kaguya's conception that Boruto was going to be a thing. When TV shows and manga are planned in the future, the showrunner is often given plenty heads up to prepare. This is often a year or more heads up. So off that logic, Kishimoto may have been trying to write Boruto's prologue as Naruto's climactic end. Imagine if J.R.R. Tolkien had written a whole novel first on the lead up to and final battle against Sauron, where Isildur managed to separate the ring from the Dark Lord. And in a sequel series, he introduced Lord of the Rings, with the last hypothetical book's climax as the first book's prologue. It makes sense. But Kishimoto wasn't planning a sequel series. He was approached by others and asked for permission to continue the series with his supervision. So the writing is extremely ham-fisted in the final act of the Naruto story. If he'd been planning for this from the start, the transition to Kaguya would have, hopefully, been smoother. He could have name-dropped her in chapter 300, not 500, and that would have made a massive difference in world building. Most of his writing in the last 150 chapters introduced substantial leaps in power. Is this because he knew Boruto would eventually be and wanted fans to expect a certain level of power in that series? Well, that can't be, as 150 chapters takes a little over 3 years to publish, and Boruto couldn't have been in the works for that long. Did he want to make the war more bombastic than having every single world-known powerful ninja present, both dead and alive, except Jiraiya? Well, with the introduction of Madara, that could have easily been the peak of the war, and I'm sure his fans would have been totally happy. For Madara to start as the original villain, and to return through sneaky means, and be revealed as the mastermind behind the Akatsuki, would definitely complete the circle. So why would Kishimoto upset the natural completion of his antagonist's story by introducing Kaguya and potentially ruining the ending to his story? Stories can be written to favor the world or the character. It's extremely rare for a story to share focus between both. Naruto is a story about character. There's far less emphasis on the world and its politics or topography or cultural differences, or whether anyone's in direct opposition of another. We never get timelines as to how long it takes to get from A to B. There's never any question of a particularly difficult portion of terrain or a country that's difficult to traverse because of criminals or environment, etc. Instead, we hone in on the characters themselves, what their personalities are like, what their individual motives are, what their moral limits are, what patience they have, or what skills they're capable of honing. What are their relationships with each other? Do we ever see them contemplating the dangers of another country that's not already in direct opposition with them? Kishimoto definitely did not spare enough time on world lore for us to properly know who or what Kaguya was. But if he knew Boruto was coming, then introducing this big baddie would definitely have been at least one way to introduce potentially further power bumps in the Boruto series. This doesn't excuse the terrible ending, but it could certainly be a legitimate reason for why it exists. Number 2. Kishimoto fell too hard in love with his characters and didn't want to see even a villain fall. One of the most basic traps a writer can fall into is one wherein they love all of their characters and can't stand to kill them off. And then, when their editor or a critic asks why no one dies in the biggest historical war, they press the panic button and kill a character or two off at random. The most famous incidence of this was likely in Harry Potter. Though there were measured and deliberate deaths throughout that story, a battle with all the most evil wizards at the story's end resulted in shockingly few good guy deaths, and it broke immersion. And so, a particular character was written to die, and us, the audience, are left jarred and confused as to why or how. This is what I believe happened to Neji. Kishimoto got to a certain point in the story and only Fodder Ninja had died. There's absolutely no emotional investment in Fodder because we don't know their overall number and we only ever assume they're infinite, so who cares if thousands of them die? Kabuto had resurrected all of the most powerful ninja to have ever existed. And all these powerful ninja combined couldn't kill a single named good guy? So Neji was the name chosen out of a hat to X, which summarily pissed everyone off. I think Kishimoto grew too attached to Madara, to the point that he couldn't even let the guy get killed off by the main characters working together. It would be easier to just stop writing for Madara and suddenly be writing for some random character that even you, the writer, doesn't care about, to then kill them off more easily. It was emotional distancing at its worst, because it destroyed any investment we had in the antagonist being defeated. There's extreme catharsis relating to seeing Darth Vader toss the Emperor down that conveniently placed hole, or frankly, any of the villains from Game of Thrones dying. Watching that bad guy you've spent years thinking about, fomenting further disgust for, being defeated feels incredible! Introduce a villain and defeat that same villain a few chapters later, no one's even given a chance to grow to care. Heck, she barely even talks. Number 3. Kishimoto ramped up power too quickly and let it get away from him. I mentioned this briefly already, but from a different angle. If he planned out this war at all, he probably had a list somewhere of all the baddies versus all the goodies. At some point, Kishimoto may have realized that his baddies didn't have enough combined power to provide a credible threat to the goodies. So instead of bringing down the power of the goodies, Kishimoto decided to bring in Madara and funneled the difference in power to him. Kishimoto is also like a mad scientist who took jutsu he created and mutated them. Edo Tensei, the impure reincarnation jutsu, is perhaps the most broken jutsu, and it can itself be broken by Madara. That's like if you consider hypothetically a god who has created a people like humans who can fly, and then one day that god decided that, actually no, these people can't fly now. Well, the people themselves would be stumped and defeated at the development, but from their perspective it would also have absolutely no logical throughput. How could this happen? But there's this one person who knew how to circumvent the god and retained the ability to fly. See how the logic leaps from unrealistic to impossible from just one line of story? Before Madara pulled in all the beasts, he was stronger than every ninja in the Alliance, having single-handedly taken on all the Kage simultaneously. Was Kabuto capable of wresting control from him during Edo Tensei, or was he too strong even for that? With the beasts in him, not even Night Guy could kill him. We see every character on the good side perform incredible feats in their bid to defeat Madara. Each of these feats are super fun to watch and incredibly impressive. But Edo Tensei Madara brushes them all aside. I think Kishimoto's logic may have been that no single ninja could ever hold this much power, and Madara had passed that invisible threshold to allow a similarly powerful entity like Kaguya to take control and be released from her prison. But why Madara? Because he had the Rinnegan on his forehead? Because he was super powerful? Kishimoto made Madara too strong pre-tailed beasts, such that afterward there was barely a chance to beat him. And then Kaguya was born. I've never really viewed Kaguya as a fighter. Powerful, but not combat-oriented. Because she does a lot of extremely fancy tricks when, if Madara had control during this time, he would probably have been wiping the floor with the characters. So in that sense, Kaguya is stronger, but worse at fighting. And when you break it down that way, it actually makes a little bit of sense. Kishimoto introduced a greater power scale and at the same time gave said power to someone who didn't have the combat intuition to use it properly. Number 4. Kishimoto was constantly bogged down by the realization his story needed to end at chapter 700. Kishimoto set for himself a stopgap, a moment where his story needed to end. And had Madara been defeated instead of in that moment becoming Kaguya, I think the story could have closed with 10 to 15 chapters to spare to properly conclude. He knew Boruto was coming and that this new story could, via flashbacks, explain how Naruto became Hokage, etc., etc. Unfortunately, never should you leave the ending of your story to be explained in a different story. For example, I've never seen anything from Boruto outside of random clips on the internet and the first Boruto movie. I've never had any interest at all in continuing the story in Boruto. Because I don't want to care about all the kids of these strange couplings. Like, how did Karui end up with Choji? Is that ever explained? And it's not that I'm a monster who hates kids, it's that I want to know more about the main cast from Naruto, not the new cast from Boruto. Frankly, I don't care if power ramps up higher and things somehow get crazier than Kaguya in Boruto. And so Kishimoto tried to put this bridge in to connect his fans to the Boruto series, but I think ultimately what he ended up doing was push a reasonable sum of people away from Boruto. Because if you're going to cut corners on your main series, all that spells is doom for the writing direction and commitment and even creativity of the spin-off series. Thus, curbing his manga length for 700 chapters just for the symbolism of it all, or maybe because 700 is a nice round number, unfortunately squished what could have been a phenomenal end. If I had 50 more chapters, I could have tied all loose ends, and I could have naturally transitioned from Naruto the hero to Naruto the Hokage with kids. I legitimately think that Kishimoto kept forgetting how close he was to his preset end chapter. There's not really any other explanation for how this comes to pass. And that's all the ideas I have for why the flaw that is Kaguya might exist in the story. Comment below on why you think she was in this story. We can read or watch interviews with Kishimoto and hear his explanations all day long if we wanted to, but based on what he did with the last 150 chapters of his story, I think he's mostly a crowd pleaser and might lie to appease us. That's not to say Kishimoto is a bad guy or anything, just that maybe his priorities in regards to his magnum opus are in the wrong place. I'm going to try for 3 videos this week, so the next should come out on Wednesday and the third on Friday. If you don't see a video on Wednesday, you will definitely see one on Friday, and maybe I'll have to keep it to 2 videos per week for now. This is an effort to be more dynamic and diverse with my videos. Just so happens that I'm coming up with ideas faster than I'm making videos, so I've got quite the backlog of what kind of videos I could make. I'm hoping to get started on my next Naruto rewrite either at the end of the week or starting next week. After that, the sky's the limit.